Hello, friends. Hey, welcome to another episode of the show, folks. I couldn't sleep last night. Honestly, this one is probably the most legit guest that we've ever had on the show. Superintendent of Fridley Public Schools, district roughly 3,000 students, just north of Minneapolis, where more than 60% students are students of color, dozens of languages spoken in those hallways, and then last year, this year, really, some of the families have been afraid to put their kids on a bus. So my guest today, she's a shiro. She's a shiro of mine, and this is the first time we've actually met. Dr. Brenda Lewis, the standard of a servant leader and superintendent of Fridley Public Schools. Brenda, welcome to the show.
It's so good to be here with you, Joe, and such an honor. Thanks for having me.
I want to start right here, right where you are, because this past year has been unlike any other year that a superintendent has lived through. What has it actually been like, just day to day, to be the superintendent of a district like Fridley in this particular season?
Every day, it's a moment of pride, right? Because our district has shown repeated resiliency. We have truly shown what all means all. We have truly shown how, in a district with 80% children of color, in a district that the reality is has all the demographics that would cause us to be a target of ICE Metro surge, yet we fought through that. We protected our children, and I don't think we're through it yet. We're not to recovery, but every day our children have been centered, whether our children are learning virtually, whether our children are here in the halls physically. Every day, our staff center our children. With that comes a bit of a trade-off that I'm really worried
Mm,
about the resiliency that our staff shows, and that might sound a little bit odd, but what we have been through is unlike anything else. People often say to me, "Do you draw parallels to COVID?" And I say, "Absolutely not." I say COVID was a virus. This is a human-made intentional attack on a public school district to upend the safety of children. And so I worry about how resilient our staff has been because we have unfortunately normalized things that should have never been and should
right,
never be normal.
right, right. Well, if I had a hat, it would be tipping your direction. But here's the thing I really can't get past. I mean, you run into a district where the stated mission is that every child belongs. And I've seen it's in your bones. It is absolutely just in the bones of who you are. And at the same time, some of those children are in buildings where fear is just the competing force, and fear and learning they don't cohabitate. They can't. And innovation and all those things that we're trying to pull from students today, that tension doesn't show up in a strategic plan, right? You couldn't have planned for this, but you're navigating it live every day, and you're calling it every child does belong, and making it possible freaking anyways, right? And I don't I don't see this everywhere, Brenda. I'll be honest. In my work, I don't see it everywhere. We've got a lot of leaders, but we don't have enough of the right kind of leaders. So where does that kind of resolve come from, boss?
I have to say it comes from how I was raised. My parents, I'm actually first generation college graduate. My parents are from southeastern Minnesota, and they taught us from a very young age kind of what we say in our district, like all means all, or belonging. I had a brother who passed away in 2017.
Mm,
He highly, highly disabled. And my parents were such advocates for not only my brother, but everybody with special education. And then I remember when I was in sixth grade, our church sponsored new to the country uh, families from Somalia. And my parents, it wasn't a question of like, are we going to help? I remember my dad was helping rehab this house and getting mattresses, and we were setting it up. And I remember just how my parents prioritized belonging for the new to the country Somali families that were coming and living in our very own town. So I think it was just in our bones as children growing up. And my parents, they didn't do diversity lessons with us. It
right.
was literally the way that they lived and the way that they currently live. currently
Isn't
live.
that the best definition of culture today? It's
Yes.
people like us, in our home in southeastern Minnesota, we do things like this,
Yeah.
and that becomes a culture over
Yeah.
time. And it's the culture that you're building. I wouldn't say that you've built; you are
Yeah.
continuously improving and building. But let me put some context to this because that inner ring suburban district like Fridley are I think the most understudied an under-resourced category in American K-12 education. They're too urban, right, for rural funding models, and they're too suburban for urban grant infrastructure. So
Mhm.
they just kind of sit in this teeter-totter land and absorbing the demographic shifts that are happening in every major metro area, often without the tools or really the narrative to support anybody doing it really well. So where you sit, what's the honest conversation that's not being had about what that inner ring suburban schools, how they're actually facing things right now?
Right there, Joe. You are factually correct from a geographic standpoint to call us suburban. That's factually accurate. We're suburban by location.
Yeah.
We are not suburban by what we would traditionally think as suburban. Again, 80% children of color, 72% children coming from homes of poverty. I'm just going to stop there. When you think
That's the
suburban,
number right there.
yeah,
That's the number. If we're looking at all numbers that I would look to go, what are we doing to
yeah,
improve the impact of
yeah,
that? Yeah.
yep. And then when you think about, again, suburban, do you think about a district that in my time here, this is ending my third year, has had 7% increase in students that are multilingual? 7%. Our biggest growth population are immigrants from Ecuador. And
Wow.
I think people don't hear that. If you look back 10 years ago in Fridley Public Schools, we were 67% white. We are less than 20% white now. The economics were different. So the biggest struggle is not only about what you talked about, that people don't understand that we actually have higher percent children of color than you would say in the bigs, Minneapolis and St.
Right.
Paul. We
Right.
actually have higher percent, and people don't hear that. They don't know that. Also, the taxpayers and residents of Fridley Public Schools, sometimes they don't understand the changing needs that we have as a district. I'm also going to talk about special education. We are so proud that we have been building special education setting for programs. And not only are we serving our own resident students with dignity, love,
Mm,
belonging in an
mm.
academic setting, we also are serving 9 other school districts in the metro area. And with
Wow.
that comes when people, and it's understandably so, all of us have been to school, when they say, back in the 80s, when I was a student, you had more than enough space and there's fewer students now. That's actually correct. However, the needs around spaces are very different for the square footage that we have in our buildings. And those schools that were in the 80s, that footprint doesn't work anymore.
Mm.
So I think when individuals hear those things, they understand deeper. But even when I talk within community groups that live within Fridley Public Schools, and I pause just like I did there when I say 80% children of color, 20% children that are multilingual, 72% of children coming from homes in poverty, people are like, what?
Yeah,
Like,
well, I'll
talking
be
about
honest.
Minneapolis?
The data that I kind of set the table with was
Yeah.
was off. Because nobody really truly understands that it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with that comes needs. It's just a different level of needs. And our children come in, and this is studied across the United States. The children in our demographic come into pre-K at a deficit as far as their levels than when you see their same age peers that are white and not from poverty. So our children already come into us behind. And our job is to eliminate that gap. And that's what people don't necessarily understand about districts that hold the demographic that we do. I'm also going to talk from a non academic standpoint, too. My own children attend Fridley Public Schools, and my son wanted to switch. He's been a swimmer and a diver, and he's a junior. And he told me last summer he wanted to sport switch from swim and dive to basketball. He's 6'7" tall.
Okay.
And I said, ooh, okay, we're going to try. You don't really have basketball experience, but guess what? In Fridley Public Schools, he was able to make the B basketball team. If he was in other districts that are called suburban, just like we are, he would have never made the team. But the
Welcome to
difference
intramural,
is,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
we have what we call, like I call pay to play, where a lot of other children who are not coming from 72% households living in poverty, they're in youth sports starting when they're 3 years old. And our children don't have that luxury. There is no youth sports that their parents are able to have them in that are traveling and all those pieces. So that's another element that people don't think about is the difference of some districts that have that pipeline for their activities and their athletics versus the children that are here. The good side of that is, though, that in Fridley, you can sport switch as a junior and still make a team.
When you think about just whole student development and
Yeah.
the ability for a student to get involved in various things without having a community that expects them to just here channel here when you're 3,
Yeah.
right? And we're going to see you through until the elite program at
Yeah.
16. And yeah, for community members that don't have the do re mi to make that happen, you're saying in-house. It's something that's
Mhm.
it's quite affordable, and we provide it for all.
Yeah.
Right.
And we actually eliminated all athletics and activities fees starting this school year. And we transport all children because that's another thing that we think about is okay, we broke down the barrier around activities and athletics. And Joe, to be very honest with you, since we have the our students that are on free or reduced lunch clearly don't pay the same amount of our fee structure.
Right.
So when we eliminated fees, it was only $18,000 of revenue in our whole district. So that really tells you about how many of our families are were actually paying those fees to begin with. But then you know what happened? Our middle school sports attendance are exploding, the enrollment. And our children then, instead of going to households where maybe they're the only one home, or maybe walking home from the bus stop and
Right.
stopping in a park and maybe engaging in behavior that isn't
You're where
structured,
you're supposed to be.
they're here.
Yes.
And then we have the transportation home as well. I'll tell you a funny little piece about,
Let me interject here just a minute
yes.
because I'm seeing at least 5 Chris Lindahl real estate signs within your within your attendance boundaries that should be like repurposed to say what you're actually doing and just to get that in bold print. Because I would bet most, even within the community, they don't understand the benefits and the values that you have established right there.
Well, and Chris Lindahl's a Fridley grad.
Oh, there we go. An unpaid advertisement for you,
Yes,
Chris.
100%. Um, and the other kind of switch or unforeseen thing that really happened, number one, is like I said, the middle school activities. Yes, we saw huge increases in that. We kind of thought we would, but it was huge. The other piece, Joe, that is actually hilarious is we are, as my own children would say, making bank. We are exploding in our concession stand revenue. And we offer, like, it's the best deal in town. You could get a hot dog and chips, and I'm all for a concession stand hot dog, even though I don't usually eat meat, but I like my hot dogs there. So you can get a bottle of water, chips, and a hot dog for $3 total.
Welcome back to the 80s or yeah, I don't know. I don't think we could have gotten a hot
I
dog.
know.
I was an 80s kid. Let me shift gears. The ice informant environment. um, created a situation that most superintendents I know treated more like a communication problem, right? Issuing a statement and then kind of staying neutral to protect the institution. You treated it more, as I watched, you were treating it as a leadership problem. And you needed to build the infrastructure to ensure that your system was led really, really well. Um, to this day, what did you build that you actually had to build? Inside the district that you
Yeah.
couldn't have anticipated that you needed to build.
So much there. When we first started, provisioning for ICE was the day after the inauguration in 2025. President Trump removed the sensitive location protection from immigration enforcement that had been in law since the early 90s. So this is 30 years, right? And when that was removed, I and other school leaders were kind of like, he's
Hmm.
signaling to us, right? Back then, we thought it was going to be about proper service of warrants. And I have to look back and say, boy, ignorance was bliss. But that's what we really provisioned around, was all things warrants. What I did not ever anticipate ever, and I'm not sure everybody understands what actually happened in Fridley Public Schools, was there the horribleness around families being upended and ICE agents coming into apartment buildings and stores and different places on the highway and impacting our families? Absolutely. That actually wasn't my focus in Fridley Public Schools. We had ICE agents directly on school property, directly interfering with the federal right for children to attend our schools. We had ICE agents following the school district superintendent more than once, who I am a US born citizen in this country. We had ICE agents sitting outside the personal residences of our school board members. We had ICE agents following our school board members. This is the level of
Mhm.
severity that happened in Fridley Public Schools, to the point that education was being prevented on our own campuses by federal agents. That's the level of seriousness. This wasn't about me with families that were impacted. Yes, we built supports around that. This was about direct interference on our properties. And at that point, my job is not immigration enforcement, it's not policy. My job is children's
Right.
right to public education. And ICE violated that right, and that is absolutely my business.
There are many leaders that would have led from the back foot of being cautious and careful, and all the world watched you lean onto your front foot. And I think many of them found their own grit, their own perseverance, their own resolute conviction to do just that. The mission of the school district is very, very clear, and um, you had the resolve to actually maybe even be okay being disliked because you were so in love with the mission.
I want to take that one step further. Um, Thank you for that, firstly. Secondly, when the New York Times article came out, they followed me. That sounded different. They did follow me, but not in the way ICE followed me. When the New York Times reporters and I gave them 2 days with me, and they came on the patrols, they saw me at the press conferences, they saw literal ICE agents interfering with our school district, right? And when that article aired, a very factually incorrect quote started to happen out
Mm.
of DHS. And this is the quote that resonated around the nation. And the quote is that whenever DHS is asked specifically about what is happening in my school district because I document it and I have the evidence, right? When they are asked about that, they repeatedly say that I am choosing to open our school doors to harbor illegal immigrants. I'm saying that nicer than they do, who are sexual predators, and harbor them from law enforcement. That is the direct narrative that DHS began saying about me through the New York Times. I fought that. I fought it and I fought it and I fought it. And finally, now, while I'm not overtly happy with it, it's progress. DHS now states that I open our schools to harbor illegal immigrants who are pedophiles and keep them from being able to be arrested. But they add, but no documented examples of this have happened.
Yeah.
I just want to pause and say that's ridiculous that I see that's a win. It's ridiculous, but that's the level that we are getting of how a federal agency lies to defend the behavior of federal agents, taking away the constitutional right for children to attend school. They have to lie about something that is not true.
Yeah, there's just so much noise out there, and people get just disillusioned by the noise. And when we can see a signal that is just shining as bright as you've been shining, saying, here's what is happening, and I have nothing to fear, I have nothing to prove, right? I, I, I'm just this mission that I have signed up for is that's the duty that I'm caring for.
Mhm.
So, and I don't believe in accidents. I don't believe that you ended up in Fridley by coincidence. Walk me through the path that brought you here.
Sure. I have been in, let's call it district administration for quite some time. And I would apply for school district jobs. And in Minnesota, school district superintendent jobs. In Minnesota, it's a little hard because the top candidates that the school board selects to interview, it's all public. So everyone knows that you applied.
Right.
And everyone knows you didn't get it. So there's a little bit of vulnerability about that, including the district that you're currently honored to serve,
Exactly.
right? So I was in Grand Forks, North Dakota as an assistant superintendent, and a dear colleague of mine said to me, Fridley Public Schools is open, because she knows I'm a Minnesota girl. She knows that I was wanting to get back here. She also knows the demographic that is really where my gifts and talents
Mm,
lie, and my
mm.
love, right? And so she talked to me about the position, and I said, Fridley Public Schools would never choose me. I said, they have so many current sitting superintendents in the state of Minnesota. They have high quality assistant soups in the metro area. And she's like, just apply, Brenda. And so I didn't apply. And fortunately or unfortunately,
Fortunately.
I had a really trying board meeting at
Mm,
Grand Forks Public Schools, and I literally, with this woman who is the assistant soup, her name is Catherine, associate soup. So we literally were struggling through this board meeting, and I texted her, even though she was sitting next to me, and said, when does Fridley close? And she's like, let's look. And we looked, and Joe, it closed that evening, like 11:59. So I literally, and I can't believe I'm putting this on your national podcast, but it's factually accurate. I literally rage applied into Fridley Public Schools because I was so hurt by that board
yeah,
meeting. And it had been
yeah.
ongoing things that were hurting me. And I rage applied. And then the consultant firm reached out and said, "Hey, we love," and they had known I applied into other searches, including their own. "Hey, we love that you applied. It's a really tough candidate pool. As you know, you likely won't get to the top 6. We will circle back if we decide to screen you." Well, then they circled back and then they screened me. And then they talked to Dr. Jack Smith, who's superintendent and retired now of Montgomery County Public Schools, the 14th largest district in the nation.
Right.
He was about 6 levels above me, and he intentionally, I was at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School, and he put me into the director of teaching and learning pre-K through 12 in that district. So 208 schools, 165,000 students. He believed in me. He believed in me,
Wow.
and he put me in that chair. And then they contacted him for a reference check. And he told them, if you want a district or if you want a superintendent that does a 90-day plan, that studies for a year, that doesn't really make much change, Brenda's not your superintendent. If you want someone that comes in and tells you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it, choose Brenda. So then I made top 6. And then I had a fantastic interview with the school board and it felt good. Then I made top 3.
Look at that.
I was interviewed for a full day, 8:30 in the morning till 9:30 p.m. And I was the Monday person. And then they had Tuesday and Wednesday, and they were going to decide Wednesday night. And I felt it went really well. I was interviewed by 96 people. 96 people.
What other sector does this?
I know, right? During an 8:30 in the morning to 9:30 p.m. with no breaks. You had lunch was part of your interview. Like it was just crazy. Dinner was part of your interview. And then I waited, and those were like the longest 2 days. And then that night it was like, and of course they're like treadmill minutes when you know the school board is making a decision, like you check your watch and it's 9:05, and then a half an hour later you look at your watch and it's 9:06. And so the minutes were ticking, and then through a funny little universe intervening, I was picking my daughters up from a play date, and then this little sweetie that I know was running in the neighborhood, and then she went missing, and so I was helping the family to find, and then Fridley Public Schools called me.
Bingo.
And I literally was sobbing in the middle of a residential street while looking for this little lost girl who was found, sobbing, accepting the Fridley Public Schools job. And people always told me when I didn't get superintendent jobs, and it hurts, right? They would say, "You know what, Brenda? This wasn't your chair. The right chair is coming." And I would never believe them. And you know what? I understand now why I didn't get those other jobs. And my right chair is here. And it is the honor of my career to serve this community. And I know, Joe, that the universe meant for me to be here.
No accidents.
Yeah.
No, I've lived long enough to know that timing is everything, and there's a right fit for the right person at the right time. And wow, yeah, FPS, lucky you, lucky them, right? Hey,
Lucky me.
we do a lightning round at the end of the interview
Hey,
here,
I'm ready.
because you are just on fire. You're just on fire, and we got to make people just believe that you also are just this regular human. So here we go. Out of the chutes. Is there a quote that you live by?
The late Paul Wellstone, "We all do better when we all do better."
Boom. Worst advice you've heard on leading people?
You got to go slow to go fast.
Even how you said that. Conversely, the best advice that you've adopted in leading your people?
Communicate most when you least want to communicate.
Boom. Wow. An unpopular opinion that you are very eager to defend?
School choice doesn't have to be about pitting private schools against public schools. We all have a role and an honor and a responsibility in serving our children. There's a place for every different type of schooling. We don't need to pit public versus private.
Something you changed your mind about lately?
Okay, it goes back to when you least want to communicate, communicate the most. I did not put out Due to safety concerns, we are
Mm.
canceling school. I literally said, due to ICE interference on our school district properties, we are canceling school.
Is there a decision in this role that you'd make 10 times over?
While there is no playbook anywhere, but I think we've built it for how to handle when federal agents upend the safety and the right for your children to come to school, I would make every decision we made as a board and a superintendent team along the way. I would make the same decision every time.
Okay, foodie girl, best farm to table restaurant in Minnesota.
Grackle over in Arbor Lakes and Maple Grove.
Another unpaid advertisement, folks. If you weren't running a school, what would you be doing?
Teaching first grade.
There it is. Bringing it all back. Wow. How about a word or a phrase for Fridley's future?
Persistence.
Dr. Brenda Lewis, everybody, thank you. Thank you. One last, if somebody's like in that position of, I am so tired and exhausted in applying for jobs, and I'm not seen. I'm vulnerable, but I'm unseen. Yours was rage apply. That's a new term that I'm going to have to use. But if somebody is just like, I've lost even the rage to apply, what encouragement to somebody that might be a district director, a school principal, or assistant soup that just wants to go to the next level, but just they keep hitting the ceiling?
I used to apply for many, many, many superintendent jobs. Once I finally narrowed to superintendent jobs where my core values were literally the core values held and upheld by the school district, is when I found my match. Don't apply for every single job. Find the job that speaks to your core and interview exactly how you are. Our school board that selected me will tell you, Brenda hurt her feelings a little bit.
Hmm.
And I did. I said, this is what we need to work on. This is what we need to work on. But you know what? They knew what they were getting in me. And there's nothing worse than actually getting a job that doesn't align with your core values. That's 10 times worse than not getting the job at all.
There's the truth. I think here's the just final lesson. If you're a school leader just watching this now, the question isn't whether you can afford to take a stance and be yourself, right? And have conviction. The question is, can your students afford you not to, right? If people want to learn more about Fridley Public Schools, where do they go? And if they want to learn more about you, how do they find you?
I would definitely recommend my LinkedIn page. Joe, this Italian magazine gave me this award of being a digital activist. I've never heard of that. So
Rage on, girl.
go to my LinkedIn page. You'll see a lot there. Fridley Public Schools website, our socials. Otherwise, just email me at lewis@isd14.org. While I want to help everyone, I hate helping people provision for ICE, but so many school district leaders reach out. I hate that I have to do that, but I do it very, very well. And I have a ton of resources. So if anyone would like support on that, I'm here for you. And I'll tell you, provisioning way beyond warrants.
There it is. Folks, if you have had your dukes down, today's the day to keep your dukes up. And we've seen a leader that has taught us all how to do that. So there's the show. Peace, friends. Stay healthy and keep those dukes up. Peace.